Hi everyone, it's Vince. I sure hope you're doing well as all of us try to just readjust to what's happening in the country right now. Many of you are staying at home, working from home, and we're kind of sort of doing that in my office, only those of us who are reporters just aren't reporting to the office. We're meeting crews in the field, and on a day like today, for example, we gathered our information and we did our editing here at my house. So, what I thought I'd start doing, maybe just for your information and maybe just a little bit more for my sanity, is to tell you a little bit more about the day, how we got the story together, and what it takes to bring you information that is extremely crucial and critical at this particular time. So I live in Evanston, and I went today to Evanston Hospital, which is part of the North Shore University Health System Network, and we went to their molecular diagnostic lab because they're one of only about 20 hospitals in the United States that have developed their own coronavirus test. We've heard so many different reports about when millions of tests will be ready for the general public. And we've also heard that perhaps we're not receiving an exact count of how many people may be positive for COVID-19. But the hospital developed its own test in its molecular diagnostic lab. And what it can do in that lab is it looks for the DNA when they have a sample from a patient. It looks for the DNA of the coronavirus. And if it finds that in the sample, then the patient has tested positive. They can turn a test around in 4 to 6 hours, which is really amazing. They began actually noticing that they knew that there would be a shortage of exams as recently as January, and they thought ahead and they started making plans and they started putting together procedures and doing what they needed to do to develop a coronavirus test. They went online last Thursday. They did a little bit more than 30 tests last Thursday. To date, they've done about 400, and they want to gear up to do as many as 1,000. We've been doing stories on people who've had to wait a significant amount of time just to get their test results, not just 2 days for a turnaround, but as many as 4 or 5 days. So being able to turn a test around in just a matter of hours is extremely important to the patients and to the doctors who need to prioritize these patients who needs to be admitted, who can go home and be on self-quarantine. Take a look now what we had to go through just to enter the hospital. Many hospitals are doing this, but I just thought I would show you. When you enter in, you actually go through 2 different checkpoints. The first checkpoint is a general question and answer session, and then if you answer one of the prompts in a way that they think needs a little bit more explanation, for example, if you've been out of town in the past 2 weeks, then you go to a second desk, and there they ask you if you've been to one of the areas that's been known to have been a hotbed or an outbreak for coronavirus. For example, if you've been to China or South Korea or Italy. And then after you answer those questions, you can make your way on into the hospital. Something else that was interesting today is that the people who live in my house were all working from home. We either call it working remotely, the Italians are calling it smart working or smart working. And what it means is I was home, but so was my wife, and so was my daughter, and all of us were in different parts of the house. I was in the dining room, my wife was in the kitchen, my daughter was upstairs in her room, and we were all working on our various projects at the same time. And sometimes I might have been a little bit too loud for my wife. Sometimes she was a little bit too loud for me when we were on conference calls. But we are adapting. This was just day one for us. I think one of the hardest things to adapt to, however, was the extremely loud noise of my espresso machine. Also here in the house, when it was time to track, we took precautions with the equipment that we have. I put on a mask and I did my best to track. And the mask was so that I didn't breathe on the microphones very closely that other people might have to use in the days ahead, even though we're disinfecting them day after day. And it sure was nice being able to sit there in the dining room with my dog and do my writing, although sometimes, as Chihuahuas are prone to do, she barked just a little bit too loud. And then, of course, what did my wife and my daughter want to do tonight to relax? They wanted to watch a scary movie, so they chose Dead Calm, which, if we flash back a little bit more than 30 years, that was one of the first dates I went on with my wife.
They were trying to kill me, do you understand?
And the movie made me so nervous that I had to actually leave the movie theater and go out into the lobby and play Galaga. And she still married me, so that was pretty nice of her. So that's how things progressed on day one for me. Actually, it's kind of day 1.5. We did some trials last week, but it's also just a new world for so many of us, coming to terms with how we're going to be working and interacting with each other in the next few weeks. I'm going to share some of the things I go through in my day because I'll be out and about getting information regarding the coronavirus and how we're all adapting here in the United States. And I'll say it again in the days ahead, but it's what gets me through every day right now. People who are my grandparents' age, they sure lived through a lot. They lived through the pandemic that killed some of their loved ones. I know I lost a great-grandmother in the early part of the 1900s. They lived through immigration coming to this country. They made it through the Great Depression, the challenges there, and the Second World War. But they built a life, and a happy one. It was the one I inherited when I knew them. They had lived through all of that, and I knew them as joyful, positive people. And I'm so sure that we'll be able to confront life the same way they did and get there. This is just a minor speed bump for all of us. We need to take it seriously and take precautions, but we're going to make it through together.